What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY in the overall market. I want to talk about why Tesla's looking very, very explosive right now as this thing is breaking all-time highs. And why tomorrow's going to be a very big day as we have more data coming out, such as PPI and Donald Trump ringing the opening bell for the New York Stock Exchange. So I'll talk more about all this data and what's happening with Tesla in just a couple of minutes. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon, in just about 19 days from now. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So looking at Tesla, we got this very, very nice breakouts to new all-time highs. I mentioned to everyone in my video that I was expecting us to test the 414 resistance. If we had broken that, we were looking for 420 as our target or even above that. And if anything, Tesla has shattered all expectations, and this thing is going for the 430 area very soon. Tesla may even surpass that and just continue to run going into tomorrow. So Tesla's looking very, very bullish. SPY also tried to rebound. The QQQ also broke all-time highs. The market's on fire because we got a decent CPI, and there was more good news that came out for Tesla. So the first piece of news is this. I'm going to talk about this first. Right now, Tesla's pushing very, very nicely as we're starting to see a lot of new developments coming out. We had Goldman Sachs come out alongside others out there who are very, very bullish on Tesla, maintaining their 345, 380, and then $400 price targets on Tesla as Tesla's continuing to expand and really break through those levels. But there's been a lot of talk by Goldman about how the AI growth that's coming is going to be huge for Tesla, and they're very, very optimistic because of that. So we saw a lot of headlines coming out involving that, about how Tesla is going to be led by AI growth. And AI demand itself is what's going to drive a lot of this growth for them, especially in the second half of 2025. They also mentioned that Tesla has the potential to reach its sales targets of 20 to 30% growth for next year. And that's very, very bullish news. On top of this, the Chinese sales were quite good. We had some nice growth in China, looking at the best month of the year so far, and one of the best months it ever had. So a lot of growth in China is looking quite strong. Domestic sales at 73,000, which is a nice amount of growth for the Model Y. Very, very great news for them, at least on that end. And then on top of that, we started to see a lot more optimism involving their robotaxi because of the new developments that came out over the last couple of days. So the robotaxi is going to be coming out very soon, most likely, possibly in the first half of 2025. And the hype continues to maintain its momentum. So that's another factor that's still continuing to help Tesla to push. So all this good news, the Chinese sales were nice. We have all these analysts from Goldman Sachs to JP Morgan coming out being very bullish on Tesla. And then we also have all this news about the robotaxi. All this bullish news is helping Tesla pump like crazy. So Goldman Sachs maintains their neutral rating, once again maintaining their stance that Tesla has a lot more upside potential. The price-price ratio is on fire as Tesla's absolutely exceeding all-time highs and outperforming the market. Historically, Thursdays tend to be weaker days for Tesla. They're only green about 47% of the time. And we tend to see more volatility at 11 o'clock a.m., 1 p.m., and also at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Besides that, with the rebound in Chinese sales and factors like that, there's another big piece of news that could affect Tesla for tomorrow. I just want to mention that Donald Trump is going to be ringing the bell for the New York Stock Exchange for tomorrow morning during open. And if he says anything involving the economy and such, that could be, causing a big move in the markets. Just know this, that under his administration, and I try to say this in a very unbiased manner, he is planning on deregulating in a lot of different ways that can benefit AI and the growth for FSD. And a lot of Tesla investors are very excited for that because this is giving Tesla the ability to give us the actions they've been talking about for so many years. And that is very, very bullish. So it's possible he says something that could cause the market to move. We'll have to see about that. Nothing is guaranteed, at least for now, but possibly this could benefit Tesla. Now, for the whole markets, we saw a lot of tech stocks such as Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvda, Amzn, and Tesla all pushing very nicely, a lot of the Mag 7. And then we also saw the rest of the market kind of like flat. But for the most part, big tech is what led the market up higher. Now, Why did the market pump? Well, there's one main reason. The first thing is CPI data came out. And just as a reminder, everything was close to expectations. Core month over month and year over year for the month of November was at 0.3 and 3.3%. That's what we expected. So that's aligned with expectations. And then all items CPI month over month was at 0.3%, with year over year at 2.7%. Now, year over year saw a slight increase compared to before, but it was still aligned with expectations. And that's why the market continued to push. Looking at the data, it looks like this. All the data was basically showing us that core is the same. And then for all items, we did see a slight increase in CPI. But once again, we were expecting this to align with expectations. So what's happening for tomorrow? Why is the market going to see more big data tomorrow? The answer is we have the PPI data report coming out. We're expecting PPI for all items month over month to be around that 0.2% to 0.3% area. It's almost the same as before. And then core PPI month over month, that's PPI without food and energy, we're expecting it to be around 0.2 and 0.3%, the same as before. For core PPI year over year, we're expecting 3.2%, a slight, teeny tiny increase. And PPI year over year for all items, we're expecting 2.6%. So in essence, we're expecting everything to be almost the same except for PPI year over year. We're expecting a slight increase in that, and that would not necessarily be a surprise. We also have initial jobless claims before market opens. So before open, we have the main pieces of data coming out. We have PPI and then initial jobless claims. So look for some volatility because of this data. Now, just to be frank, I think that most likely what's going to happen is this. Just like CPI, I think PPI. I think that PPI is going to be following the trend. So PPI is most likely going to be seeing a very, very decent core, and then there could be a slight increase in all items. We'll have to see about that. And by the way, PPI stands for the Producer Price Index. It's just like CPI, but on the wholesale side. So that's very impactful. It tends to be very forward-looking data. Just keep that in mind. So this data is important. It might cause some volatility in the markets tomorrow. Hopefully the data is decent. Besides that, for earnings, we have Adobe announcing earnings right now, and tomorrow we have Costco announcing their earnings. Adobe is down because their earnings were not that good. The reason for that is because actually earnings were decent, but their outlook is what was not too good. When it comes to their earnings, just know this: their adjusted EPS was at $4.81, above expectations. Revenue was up 11% at $5.61 billion, which is still not bad. However, right over here, you guys could see that for its fiscal year, so for 2024, the company expects revenue between $23.3 and $23.5 billion, below expectations of $23.8 billion. And then their overall EPS is expected to be around $20.2 to $20.5 per share, which is below the expectation of 20.52. So if anything, guidance was not that strong. That's why the share price is down. Last thing I'll talk about before I talk about Tesla stock is this. The market's at neutral right now, kind of stuck in the middle. Will we become a lot more greedy as buyers step in, or will the market kind of be stuck? So we'll see about that. Momentum is still extremely greedy. The puts and call option ratio is at extreme greed, and we'll have to see what the VIX does if that does do any kind of shift. Anyways, that is it for the news. That's it, guys. Let's just focus on the charts now. Don't forget the main things will be the PPI reports and initial jobless claims, and then also Donald Trump being the guy that's going to be ringing the opening bell for the New York Stock Exchange. Those are the main things for the market for tomorrow, and we'll have to see what this leads to. As far as Tesla goes, it looks bullish. It's very, very strong on the 4-hour time frame. When we zoom out and go to the daily, it also looks very, very strong, very, very bullish. It's holding up very nicely. So, in my opinion, as long as we don't lose 420 and 414, we're going to favor more upside. If we lose 420, look for 414. If 414 fails us, we could be dipping back down towards 400 flat, like around 404, then 400. So keep those levels in mind, okay? Most likely, we're going to likely hold above 420, and this is going to likely try to keep on going. So I think the chart is favoring that it might try to shuffle at this 430 area, then maybe break it and start going for 435 and 440 as our potential targets as we look very, very bullish. We're breaking out very strongly. There's a lot of momentum. Volume is coming, at least decently. I think there's a good chance this tries to push even more. So I don't think we're done with the move yet. I think we try to go a little higher, and we're going to try to exceed 430. Once that breaks, we could get closer to 435, and then 440 is our potential targets. And just know that Tesla looks very bullish in my eyes. So it's doing a good job at holding up. For SPY, I think something a little bit different. And don't forget that for Tesla, it could be impacted by Donald Trump tomorrow. and then also the PPI reports. But just know, technically speaking, it looks very bullish. The share price looks like it wants to explode even more. SPY, on the other hand, is going to be impacted by more data. I think that this might dip a little bit, get back down to about 606 to 605.5 or so for a little dip right here. Then we could attempt to bounce. We could draw this out using a fib retracement, other factors like that as we have our key levels. But nonetheless, guys, I think that there's a good chance that SPY is going to attempt to hold up. There might be a small dip back down to the support around 606, and we'll see if we get a big bounce off of that back up to 609. So it depends on PPI and also Donald Trump and how he rings the bell and what he says. But if we get a pump, we should bounce off 606 and go back up to 609 and try to exceed all-time highs. If we don't break past 606, we could reject and start dipping back down to 604 and eventually fill the imbalance down here around 603. My gut tells me the most likely possibility is we dip a little bit back down to 606 towards the 20 EMA. Then we bounce right here and start pushing back up to 609 as the most likely possibilities. So I tend to favor that a little bit more. So just to be safe, I'm favoring that we try to push higher, and we'll have to see how things end up going from here. So I think that the charts look bullish, and I think that we're doing a good job. The economic calendar also looks quite good. So hopefully the data looks decent, but I still favor that upside move. For ES, we have 6100 as our resistance and our supports at 6080 and then 6065. My gut tells me we could dip closer to 6080, then I think we could be trying to bounce because the 4-hour PPO is looking decent and there's good volume coming in. So look for a dip and then a bounce is the most likely possibility. We'll have to see how it goes from here. So I think we might retest 6065 and we'll see if PPI causes a bounce or not. If it does, there could be a small dip and a bounce coming. We could attempt to once again break out towards those higher levels. For Nvidia, we look more bullish. We'll have to see if we can break past 140. We might retest 137 before it tries to bounce again. There's a possible slanted left shoulder, head, and right shoulder that's forming here, which could lead to a breakout up to about 142. So look for a dip and a bounce, and 142 becomes a stronger possibility. Please keep that in mind. For Bitcoin, we get this resistance around 101,000. If we reject here, we could be looking for a move back down to 100,500. We'll see if we bounce or not off of that. So look for a dip, and then a bounce is the most likely possibility as we look more bullish. Overall, I think it's doing a good job, but I think there might be a little retracement to this imbalance towards 100,500, if not 99,000 if that fails us. And then we'll see if we bounce. So look for a small dip, then a bounce is the most likely case. And then we'll see what happens with all the data that's coming out. I want to call out that NQ has broken all-time highs again with a big green bar. Generally, these big green bars do favor like more upside eventually. There could be a dip back down to this imbalance that's coming, also a test of previous resistance becoming support at 21,700 flat if 21,750 fails us. So look for a small potential dip. Then we'll see if we get a big bounce after that back up towards 21,800. So look for a small dip and a bounce as the most likely possibilities. We'll just have to see how things go from here. The QQQ, we pumped all the way up to about 530, and now we're starting to dip. We could be on our way back down towards 527.5 or around that area if that ends up failing. So look for a small 1-point dip on the QQQ, and we'll see if we get a big bounce from here or not. If we don't bounce off 527, we go back down to 525. And if we do bounce off this, we could be looking for a push back up to 530, which if we break, we're looking for 532 and then 535. What do I think is going to happen? Possibly a small dip for now, and then we'll see if we get a big bounce depending on PPI and Donald Trump. So we'll see. But overall, I do favor that a little bit more as the most likely possibility. In case we do lose 527, make sure you watch 525. And in case we do bounce off 527, we're going to be looking for 530 to break. So I think it might dip a little bit. Then we're hoping we get a bounce off this big green bar. We'll see about that just to be safe. Apple had this big rejection. It did pump very nicely to 250, which is what our target was, only to come back down. So we might be retesting 245. If that does end up happening, I wouldn't worry too much. 245 is going to be a nice support. As long as we hold that, we could attempt to rebound for 248. If we lose this, we could be dipping lower for like 242. I'm not really favoring that. I think we might test 245 to 244, then bounce in that range down here. So we might hit this and bounce, and then we'll have to see how things end up going, at least from here. For Netflix, we had this resistance to watch for around this 940 area. It's actually kind of tough. If we reject here, we're going to be looking for a dip back down towards that 927.5 zone. excuse me, I think there's a good chance we try to dip closer to 930 than 925, and we'll see if we bounce off this to continue to go higher. The 4 hour is gaining a little bit more volume, and we do look more bullish after this big green bar. So generally, we do see a small dip before it tries to continue to go higher once we test the previous resistance. So watch that very carefully. You could also draw out your fib level just to see these very, very key levels just like this. So as you can see, we're getting very close to our 0.236 retracement area. We could get closer to our golden pocket down here before it tries to bounce. So just keep that in mind. There might be a little retracement coming before anything else. MSTR looks more bullish, trying to fill these imbalances. We have this resistance to watch for around this 417 area. If that breaks, I think 420 plus is coming. It looks more bullish looking at the current direction, the fact that we're seeing a little bit more volume coming back. So there is potential in this chart. If we lose 405, we could be dipping back down to 400. As long as we continue this trend, we're looking for 420, then 425 as our targets right up here. My gut tells me 420 and 425 are coming for more upside. This depends on PPI and what happens with Trump, but for now, we look more bullish. So the chart is favoring upside a bit more, so it favors 420. Celsius got this rejection off our 200 EMA only to come back down to our 20 EMA, and we're trying to hold this. I don't think it's going to hold that well. I think it might tip a little bit more towards 29.20 for the 50 EMA test for a small dip, and then we'll see if we bounce off our 50 EMA instead. So either it dips to 29.20 and it bounces. If not, around 28.5 and then it bounces. So look for some downside and a bounce is the most likely case, and we'll have to see what happens from there. There's a slight divergence here, so it might lead to a dip back down to 29.23, and then we'll see what happens after that. For Supermicro, we have this bearish divergence that's been developing. We want to see if we could reclaim 38.65. Otherwise, there's going to be a risk of this dipping a little bit lower. So it's not looking that good. It might dip towards 36 before it tries to get that bounce. That's also where we had previous resistance becoming support. So there might be a small dip coming before it tries to rebound. We'll have to see how PPI affects this, but look for a little bit more downside. For Palantir, we look nice. We're holding above our 20 EMA. We got to hold above 72.23. As long as that holds, we could be looking for an attempt to get back up to 75. If this fails us, we're looking for a move back down towards 70, but I'm favoring a push back up to 74 as the most likely case. This depends on our data, but we do look a bit more bullish. For Rivian, we are holding support nicely. We got to hold 13.5. If we lose that tomorrow, we're dipping back down to this gap fill for 13.09. And if we hold this, we could attempt to bounce for 14.06. So we'll have to see if that ends up being the case. So watch to see if we get that bounce. For SoFi, we're in a channel right over here. We have this resistance to watch for around the 16 area. We'll have to see if we break past this or not. If we do break this, we will be coming back up for 16.25. But if we come short, we could reject and make our move back down to 15.68. So we'll see what happens with all the data coming out for tomorrow. This is at resistance, so be careful. There is a risk of it coming down and then bouncing. So it might retest 15.68, but hopefully it tries to bounce off that to try to break out. Otherwise, just be careful, and we are just range bound on SoFi. Same thing with the IWM Russell 2000. We're just completely range bound, going back and forth in this channel. We're hitting resistance, and we're starting to dip here, so I do anticipate it might be dipping to the 236s. Then we'll see if we bounce again. We need to break past 240 to remain bullish. Otherwise, we're stuck within this range, and we have to give this more time to develop. For AMD is looking a bit more bullish in my opinion. The reason for that is because we're starting to see some buyers defending it. We have to see if we can get back above 130 and hold it. If that holds, we're looking for 133. If this rejects, we could be coming back down. I'm favoring 133 as a potential target, and then we'll have to see what happens after that. For ARM, we look more bullish. As long as it does not lose 142, I favor 144 than 146. It looks more bullish. We have a nice green bar forming, and there's a reversal signal, which suggests that 144 and 146 are going to be our targets. For Coinbase, we look more bullish. As long as we don't lose 316, I'm favoring a push for 320, eventually 325. So watch and see if that ends up being the case as we look more bullish. Amazon looks decent, but I just want to call out that 230 is a tough resistance. We'll have to see if we could hold above that or not tomorrow. We might dip for 229 flats, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. So look for a test of 229 and a bounce for 230. If we break 230, I think 232 is going to be our next potential target. So a dip and a bounce to 232 is the most likely possibility. I think we're doing a great job, at least thus far. For Meta's on a very, very strong uptrend right now, holding our 20 EMA very nicely. We could dip a little bit lower back down towards 629, and we'll have to see if we bounce off that or not. So look for a dip for 629, and we'll see if we bounce back up for 640 essentially. But we're bullish on Meta. We're making higher highs and higher lows. For me to turn bearish, I want to see it lose 618. There's no sign of that yet, and we're holding up very nicely. There could be a small dip to about 629, but then we could bounce off that as we still look more bullish. Microsoft is holding up nicely, but there is tough resistance at 450. Look for a retracement back down to about the 446 to 447 range. We could dip a bit, then we'll see if we bounce back up to 450. If we lose that, we could be dipping back down to 443. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But I favor a dip back down towards 447, then we should bounce and start pushing for 450 plus. For Google, we look bullish. I think we easily go up to 200 tomorrow. This is very strong compared to the broader markets, especially as we had the new AI news coming out. And with the fact that they're going to be investing a lot more into its AI capacities, they're going to be investing over $50 billion more into that. So I'm going to be looking for an attempt to get back up to that $200 target or above. Now, DJT may make a big move tomorrow with the announcement that Trump is going to be ringing the bell for the New York Stock Exchange. This could be pushing all the way up for that 37 target and 40 plus. The VIX is looking more bearish as we got this rejection near our 50 EMA. Because we're not above our 20 EMA at 13.8, this could be favoring a move down to fill this gap because the market may have more upside potential. The 10-year looks more bullish. We could be looking for 4.3 as our target, especially if you have that gap to fill. And then the dollar is also kind of flat right now. It could actually dip back down to about 106.39, and we'll see what happens after that. But so far, we're doing a good job. With that being said, the market is bullish. The market's looking more strong in terms of its direction. Some stocks may see a small dip upon open, such as SPY and the others. And then we'll be watching to see if we get a bounce depending on what happens with Trump and all the data that's coming out. Tesla looks very strong, very resilient. We'll see if we could crack past that 430 resistance. If that's the case, I expect this to continue to run, and there's no sign of rejection quite yet. As long as we're above 420, I think we're going to be completely fine. And I think there's a lot more potential upside for it as we look very explosive. 430 could break, and if that's the case, I'm looking for 435, and eventually 440 would be our next target. So we look good on Tesla. I thank you all so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow before market open to give you guys an update on PPI and what happens with open. Until then, have a great rest of your day and peace out.